Teaching about the Holocaust presents a number of challenges. At the Bluecoat School in Oldham, Sarah Hall uses a timeline to contextualise the subject with her Year 9 class.
What happened and why these things happened.
She uses materials and ideas researched and created by the Holocaust Education Development Programme, part of the Institute of Education.
In the lesson, we look at the chronology of the Holocaust so that the pupils could contextualise the historical events from 1933 through to 1945 by looking at victims, but also looking at laws that came in and how the actual Holocaust itself evolved over time. How might a timeline help us understand historical context? Kyle?
It might show the main points so we understand what's going on through all of it.
Excellent. It's going to give us, isn't it, a visual overview of what happens at particular stages so we can understand it in a bit more detail. Okay, I'm going to give you a pink card here, and on the front of it there is some information about a victim. Once you get your card, start to think about that question there. What happened to the individual and why? The first lot of cards we used were about victims, so this was really good because it enabled them to personalise them and to think about their stories and their testimonies, but also to realise that they were real people that had hopes and aspirations, like the children in the classroom. OK, can I have Helena labels? David?
When she was 19, they found out that she had mental disabilities, and she was sent to a mental hospital, and then when the Nazis came into power, they had her murdered in Brandenburg.
So this was someone again who perhaps is maybe slightly different to what we would normally think of as a victim. This lady had a mental disability or a mental disorder. Okay, what I'd like you to do is to find out the date of when the person died. I'm going to ask you to go and put your cards onto the board. So people from Taylor to M, do you want to pop up and put yours on for me? The cards that we used in the timeline activity are colour-coded, so they're different colours for different aspects, and that really helps the pupils, but also because they got up and put the things onto the timeline, they could actually see the kind of visual chronology of the Holocaust happening in front of them. OK, there were different motivations here, weren't there, with some of the victims. What other motivations did people read about on their cards? Jess?
Mine was part of Germany's Communist Party.
My person resisted the Nazis.
Mine was Roman City Gypsy, and he was killed because he was a different culture.
Can anyone tell me what this word genocide is? Alex?
Is it a mass murder?
Yeah, so a genocide is a systematic mass murder of a particular group. So some of the cards up there aren't genocide, are they? Can anyone tell me then if they had a card where they don't think it was genocide? Jake?
I think in mine they were all captured for resisting.
OK, they were murdered, and yes, that was terrible, but perhaps it wasn't in a systematic way of trying to get rid of everyone. The next thing we're going to add to our activity is some red cards, OK? And we're going to think about how this helps us understand that word that we've looked at this morning, context, OK?
While the pink cards outline short biographies of individual victims from different groups, the red cards help contextualise the Holocaust by describing important historical events.
What's the People's Court? It's a type of court without a jury or anything.
What I really wanted to get out of the lesson was for pupils to not only be able to personalise with victims, but to think about the different laws which were introduced against the Jewish people, but also against Roma, gay, Sinti, black people, how these changed and developed over time, whether we had an organic kind of system or whether it was particular laws triggered at particular times. Has anyone got one from in the mid, say, 1930s? OK, David?
All opposition parties and independent trade unions are banned. Hitler's Nazi party is declared to be the sole political party existing in Germany.
Now, if you're the sole political party, what do you think that means you might be able to do? Ben?
Anything you want.
Good. Can you go and stick your cards up where they belong on the timeline? The next set of cards I'm going to give you has got a slightly different focus. All I want you to think about, who is this affecting? How is this having an impact on our timeline, OK?
These yellow cards represent the different laws passed by the Nazis against Jewish people.
OK, who do we think these yellow cards might be against? B?
Against Jews.
OK, these are some of the laws that were brought in against Jewish people over the time period from 33 onwards. Let's think about then, have we got anything which is like a physical separation where you as a Jewish person are being kind of separated from other people in society in some way. Lauren?
The Jews to be grouped together in ghettos in the towns to make it easier to control and ways to deport them.
From what we've just talked about and the dates you've given me, could someone summarise what is happening to the Jewish people during that time period? Hannah?
Were they gradually leading up to the mass extermination, but they were cutting them off from day-to-day life and gradually getting worse?
Yeah. Okay, so we've started off, haven't we, in 1933 with people being separated and inconvenienced in their lives. And it's got gradually worse, hasn't it, as we've gone through the time frame until we get to the mass extermination, which we're going to look at starting in kind of 42 and 43. When we use images, we might use images, say, of the camp. For example, at Auschwitz, we might do an image of the gate, but we won't do anything which is inappropriate. Again, I think we have to remember that we are showing these to younger pupils, and they can be very horrific images, and I think sometimes they don't have the emotional capability necessarily to understand what's actually happening in the image. And I think it is very important that we don't use those types of images in the classroom. People are starting to be segregated, things are starting to be different. And then from this time onwards, we can see we start to get the mass extermination of people, don't we? Okay, now up on the board here, there's a list of numbers, and down the bottom it says 11 million. If I just turn the light off a moment, does anybody have any idea what these numbers might be? B?
Isn't it how the Jews were living in particular countries?
Yeah, now this was a list that was set up by a man called Adolf Eichmann, and it tells us how many Jewish people were in each particular country. So what does that tell us about what they were planning maybe to do? Hannah?
Was it that the Nazis wanted world domination, so they were trying to get rid of all the Jews of the whole
All
world?
the Jews in the whole world, yes, that's it. So the word that we've used already, isn't it, begins with G, is genocide, yeah. Okay, and that's about the systematic murder of an entire race or an entire population. Okay, one thing I'd like you just to do before we end today, can I just have a few hands up for one thing that you've learnt today, you've thought about, or something that's challenged you? David?
I didn't know that they did anything else but kill them, because with the gypsies they sterilised them first.
So again, it was dehumanising, wasn't it, but in a slightly different way. Okay, Taylor?
I wasn't sure how long it went on for, I didn't realise it went on for 12 years or something like that.
This is what often happens. People think it's just this 1940s bit, don't they, up here? And we kind of forget about everything that's down here. James? I think for me as a teacher, it becomes really obvious when pupils have become completely engaged and hooked in a subject, when they take their own time to do things off their own back. During Holocaust Memorial Week, I had a selection of pupils who wanted to do assemblies for the entire school. And again, those were things that pupils had done by themselves and delivered to 1,500 pupils in a school. That's not your normal kind of Year 9 activities.